It is Thursday, the 14th of October. Welcome mornings on 6 News. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. The top stories we're following right now, breaking overnight. The Mitchell Shire leaves lockdown as Victoria's case numbers remain high but relatively steady. The state's still set to ease restrictions in less than a fortnight as another COVID exposure site is confirmed at Melbourne's Royal Children's Hospital. Plus calls on social media for Dan Andrews to resign as Victorian Premier amid IBAC branch stacking revelations. The Shadow Attorney General claiming that the state's Labor Party stinks of corruption, and businessman and United Australia Party Chairman Clive Palmer loses his High Court battle against Western Australia, preventing him from suing the state for up to $30 billion. A reminder that you can always read the latest headlines 24/7 at our website 6newsau.com, and we thank you for tuning in this morning on the very first edition of Mornings. Shortly we'll be speaking to Dr. Ross Hedefin, the co-owner of Biogon, an Australian business set up to make everyday plastic items be able to biodegrade away when disposed to landfills. But first this morning to breaking news, and we are less than an hour away from finding out New South Wales COVID-19 case numbers at 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The state recorded 444 new locally acquired infections yesterday after the end of a lockdown that lasted over 100 days. Celebrations range from going to the pub to getting a haircut, small luxuries that have now been granted to people who've been fully vaccinated.
It's like Mel Gibson in Braveheart, we're going, we're off, we're happening. It's all about Australia and it's all about freedom, and thank you so much.
Meanwhile, in Victoria, COVID cases are remaining relatively steady, some now hoping that the state has finally reached its peak. Deaths, however, have risen, 13 people passing away yesterday. Vaccination rates are also remaining steady. The state is on track to reach its 70% double dose target sooner than expected, meaning restrictions could potentially be lifted slightly earlier than expected. The Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne will now introduce mandatory rapid COVID testing for visitors after a virus scare at the hospital's neonatal ICU, where a visiting parent later tested positive for coronavirus. Overnight, the Mitchell Shire left lockdown. Premier Dan Andrews saying on social media that, quote unquote, the number of unlinked cases and cases infectious in the community have stabilised, and the public health team is confident that the outbreak is well managed. Authorities say a Mount Gambier woman who tested positive for COVID-19 caught the virus in Melbourne, not the small town of Casterton, as previously thought. The ABC reports that it was initially believed the woman visited family in the Western Victorian town that is included with within South Australia's border bubble. Meanwhile, SA Premier Stephen Marshall says that for the vast majority of people, it's going to be a very different Christmas, a very normal Christmas, and people who are double vaccinated will be able to come into his state, though. The Chief Health Officer says some border restrictions may remain in place for certain areas. Victoria's Shadow Attorney General Tim Smith has told Sky News that every fair-minded Victorian should be concerned over allegations emerging during an IBAC investigation. There have been calls on social media for Premier Dan Andrews to resign after MP Luke Donlan quit Cabinet over branch stacking allegations. Smith tweeting that the Andrews government and Victorian Labor stink of corruption. Over in New South Wales, we found out who'll be attending the first week of ICAC's public inquiry this coming Monday. It includes former New South Wales Premier Mike Baird and the new Deputy Liberal leader Stuart Ayres. Revelations that ICAC was investigating now former Premier Berejiklian over her relationship with Maguire was, of course, what led to her resignation a couple of weeks ago. Twitter has become the latest social media platform to experience difficulties. Yesterday afternoon, users in Australia and overseas as well reported issues with the timeline, pages loading and notifications on both mobile and web versions. It comes after Facebook experienced a 6-hour worldwide outage that also affected Instagram and WhatsApp. Clive Palmer has lost his High Court battle against the state of Western Australia, preventing him from suing for up to $30 billion. The businessman and United Australia Party chairman wanted to take legal action after decisions made regarding his Balmoral South iron ore project in the Pilbara led to a reported financial loss. loss, claiming the law stopping him from suing discriminated against him as a Queenslander. But yesterday, the High Court unanimously said that the law passed by the WA Parliament was valid. Premier Mark McGowan taking to Facebook to respond, declaring the ruling was a monumental victory, adding it was proof that his government would, quote unquote, never stop fighting for the people of Western Australia. Well, there's renewed concern over the amount of plastic waste in Australia's environment. Dr. Ross Hedefin is the co-founder of Biogon, an Australian business set up to make everyday plastic items able to biodegrade away when disposed to landfills. We spoke to him earlier to discuss what he does and the environmental issues facing the nation right now.
So the products we make are mainly landfill biodegradable or home compostable. So what we want to do is, we know we're not going to change people's attitudes to using plastics in the next 10 years. We've been using it like this for 30, 40 years. And if you look at the industry projections, it's going to double again in the next 30 years. So in order to limit the amount of plastic waste that's accumulating at a horrific rate in the world, if any new plastic that was made would biodegrade away when it was disposed of, then that would at least cap the amount of plastic waste sitting around at the moment. And we can't do anything that's been out there before. But any new plastic product, we can make it biodegrade away, and that's what Biogon does. A lot of the plastic waste is coming from food these days. Food packaging is a huge item. They use it to try and preserve food, but they're not accounting for the cost of disposing it. The cost of saving a bit of food versus the cost of disposing it hasn't been weighed out real well. And so if you think about how much food we import, it's got to be just huge. And then a lot of it's used every day in packaging and shipping items around Australia. Every package that goes out the door is in some sort of plastic bag on a pallet wrapped in plastic stretch wrap or packaged up. And so a wide range of uses for it. You can actually live almost plastic free without making a huge effort. You don't have to take a plastic bag from the store for anything. So that's a big win right there. You don't have to get bottled water. You can use a reusable bottle. And so simple little things like that can cut down the plastic consumption a lot. A lot of the single-use plastic is for consumers away from home. They're getting a meal out on the road or while they're walking down the street. So just cutting that down would cut down about half of the plastic waste, they say. So that's a big step. But the other factor is, you'd have heard of the Red Cycle group in Australia. They will recycle soft plastics. Trying to get to where you're putting no plastic in your own waste bin. Take it back to Red Cycle and put it in there, make sure it gets recycled.
Dr. Ross Hedefin there speaking to me earlier. Checking in with today's weather forecast. Brisbane, thunderstorms expected getting to a top of 30. Similar in Sydney, 14 degrees. Showers and 18 in the nation's capital, Canberra. Also 18 in Melbourne. 14 and light rain in Hobart. 15 in Adelaide. 27 in Alice Springs. Finally getting some sunshine there after gloomier conditions everywhere else. Partly cloudy and 24 in Perth. And in Darwin, a warm top of 33. And finally, just a reminder that this coming Tuesday, there will be a brand new episode of Uncensored where we speak to a key newsmaker about issues that matter to them and matter to you without any editing, of course. Can't reveal who it is just yet, but it's certainly someone that people have a lot of opinions on. We'll, of course, ask them the tough questions as with every single guest. And that is mornings for this Thursday. Thank you very much for tuning in to our very first edition. It's something we've got to give full credit to our team for making this happen. You'll see them popping up here in the presenting role very soon. I'll be back Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, of course, and we'll have the latest headlines on social media and our website 24/7 6newsau.com. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Have a great day.